What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video, and this one is transfer tips for Game Week 35. So I'm going to go through some of the popular players being brought in and taken out of people's squads and give my opinion on whether they're a good move or not, and some alternatives as well. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button. Let's get into it. So let's start with Evanilson. Just over 40,000 transfers out this week following that red card against Man United. Now, he is currently suspended for the next 3 matches, which would mean he'd miss pretty much the rest of the season apart from Leicester at home in Game Week 38. But Bournemouth have appealed that suspension, and we should find out whether it was successful or not before Game Week 35. So if you're in a position where you're looking to sell him for a Vissa, Cunha, or Chris Wood, or someone like that, then fair enough, because they do have Arsenal away and Man City away 2 of the next 3 game weeks. But if you were originally looking to keep hold of him, I would wait for news on that suspension, especially if you're in a similar position to me where you've not long come off the back of a bench boost and your overall squad is quite good. If you can bench him for Arsenal away, all of a sudden Villa at home is fine. Man City away, not great, but if you had to play him, not the end of the world. And then Leicester at home in Game Week 38 is another great fixture. So I would be looking to probably keep hold of him if you've got him. But if you want to upgrade to like a Vissa Wood, I completely get it. For anyone looking to buy him, it's not the week to do it, because he might be suspended, if not, it's Arsenal away, which is obviously a tough fixture, even if Arsenal rotate a bit. So on Marcus Rashford, you can wait for Unai Emery to confirm it later on this week, but the reports coming out last night are that he's going to miss the rest of the season for Aston Villa, that he might be back by the final game week, but it's Man United away and he's on loan, so he can't play anyway. So if you've got Marcus Rashford, he's definitely going to be a sell this week. Usual caveats apply. If you've got 7 other attackers that you can play instead and you want to put this transfer off until 36, 37, whatever it might be, fair enough. But if you were planning on playing Rashford, you're going to need to upgrade him to someone different. Now, the player that I spoke about a lot yesterday was Bruyne in Burma. I think at this point, if you can afford Rashford to win Burma, that should be your move. For anyone that can't afford that or has already got him, these are the other options that I would look at. It's actually quite tricky to find a really good midfielder at that price or below. I've put Jarrod Bowen on the list. He's a bit more expensive than Rashford. But again, if you can afford it and you've got in Burma already, Spurs at home this week, and that fixture is in between the 2 semi-final legs in the Europa League for Spurs, so there will probably be some rotation, especially if they lose that first game. Then Man United away off the back of their second leg of the Europa League semi-finals, and potentially that could go to extra time. Forest at home in 37 is not bad, and then Ipswich away Game Week 38 is great. So if you've got the money, Jarrod Bowen is probably the best player on this list. I've put Eze on there, for those of you that aren't tripled up on Palace and don't have him already. The problem is, I think when you get to Wolves at home in 37, that potentially could be after an FA Cup final. So maybe there could be some rotation there. And then it's Liverpool away last game. So I think Eze is good for Forest at home, Spurs away in 35, 36, but not great afterwards. Morgan Rogers will start every game left for Villa, based on everything we've seen so far this season. Fulham at home, Bournemouth away, Spurs at home, Man United away. It's not bad. It's not amazing. The underlying stats are not that great either, but he's playing in really good positions for Villa. He's got plenty of returns already. The minutes are great. He's a boring pick, but you can put him in and just leave him for the rest of the season. You're not going to have to worry about him. Morgan Gibbs-White I would have ahead of Elanga, because although if they both play similar minutes, I prefer Elanga, he has been benched the odd time recently. His minutes aren't quite there, whereas with Gibbs-White you have those minutes. You know he's going to start every game. They've got Leicester at home in 36. Outside of that, Palace away this week, West Ham away 37, Chelsea at home in 38. Again, outside of Leicester, it's not an amazing run, but it's certainly not awful. And you know he's going to start all of those. Nottingham Forest are trying to get those Champions League places wrapped up. If you don't want to go for Bowen, or you don't have quite the money for that, you could go a bit cheaper with a punt on Kudus. I always say this, right? He's a player that everyone rates and looks great when he plays, but the underlying numbers don't suggest he's going to get a huge amount of returns. But his minutes generally are good, and he's got obviously the same fixtures as Bowen, which are pretty decent. So I actually quite like the Kudus punt. To be honest, I think Gibbs-White and Rogers are fine. They're like safe, solid picks you know are going to play. The numbers are okay. If you're someone that's looking for a punt at this stage of the season, I would maybe take it on Kudus. Like, West Ham are not playing brilliantly. Graham Potter was very frustrated after the Brighton game, but his minutes continue to be good and the fixtures are decent as well. So I quite like the punt on Kudus over a Gibbs-White or Rogers. And like I said, Eze's probably fine for the next 2, but not the 2 after that. And then I put Matoma on the list. But he got benched last game after being benched the game before. Presumably at some point soon he comes back into that first 11. And he's definitely capable of playing every game remaining for Brighton. There maybe are slight doubts on their minutes right now. And also, the 2 games at home are Newcastle and Liverpool. Then the away games are Wolves and Spurs, which are not terrible, but I'm not actually the biggest fan. I think in terms of underlying numbers, goal threat, assists and stuff like that, Mitoma's pretty nice and his minutes are generally good. But I'd maybe avoid him at this point. So I think Bowen if you've got the money, Rodgers and Gibbs-White if you just want to put someone in and forget about them. But I quite like the punt on Kudus. If you look at other midfielders at that kind of price, like 7.3 and below, I don't think there's many options. Like Kluivert, for example, again, is pretty safe and solid. You know he's going to play every game. He's on penalties, but you're buying him before Arsenal away. I don't think that makes a huge amount of sense. I think with Iwobi, the boat has kind of been missed on Fulham now. I mean, the next 3 fixtures are not bad. Villa away, Everton at home, Brentford away. You know he's likely to play, but I'm not the biggest fan of his attacking output for the most part, even though he has done well recently. Jacob Murphy's in great form, and we're going to talk about Newcastle later. The fixtures get a bit trickier now. Semenyo instead of Kluivert, but you've got the same thing about Arsenal away next game. Trossard I'm going to talk about in a little bit. You know, Brennan Johnson might get good minutes if Spurs are rotating, but he might not, so I wouldn't go there. Szoboszlai for Liverpool, the fixtures are about to get a little bit worse. I probably wouldn't be buying Liverpool players. You've got like Damsgaard and Schade at Brentford. I mean, if you want an alternative to Mbeumo, like Schade's minutes are really good. The fixtures are good as well from 35 all the way to 38. But if you're someone that values form, I mean, he hasn't got an attacker return since game week 25, despite the underlying numbers being mostly fine. So Schade or Damsgaard potentially as Brentford picks alongside Mbeumo, but definitely not instead of. And then there's just no point in me going further down the list. No one's going to buy Savinho right now. So for me, I think if I was buying, definitely Bowen, maybe a punt on Kudus, otherwise just a Rodgers or Gibbs-White probably. So I just mentioned Trossard there. He's had the 3rd most amount of transfers in for midfielders so far this week, although the number of transfers is quite low, nearly 30,000. Absolutely smashed it in the double game week. A 16-pointer against Ipswich, followed it up with an 8-pointer against Palace. Started in both of those games. I think the boat has been missed with Trossard. I think if you were going to take the punt, it was in the double where he was probably likely to start at least one of those games. He ended up starting both. And then in game week 33, I spoke about rotation for game week 35. Therefore, Trossard might start that game against Bournemouth as well. The problem is, after that, the Champions League is done for Arsenal. So the semi-final will be completed after 35, before 36. It's Liverpool away in 36. I think Arteta will go fairly full strength. Maybe if there was a situation where they've gone to extra time against PSG, that might not be the case. But you can't guarantee a Trossard start. And then after that, you've got good gaps between Liverpool away, Newcastle at home and Southampton away. And Trossard is not part of their first choice 11. If everyone's fit and available, it's going to be Martinelli left wing, Marino up front, Saka right wing, and Trossard's just not in the team. So it's one of those where if you took the punt, happy days, you're probably going to keep him for Bournemouth. I fully get that. But I'm not sure I would be buying him right now because I don't know how many minutes you're going to get over the next few. And one of the next 2 is Liverpool away anyway. So let's talk about Jamie Vardy next. Not in great form for penalties and not a huge amount of transfers in yet this week either. But some of you might start looking at him because they've got Southampton at home in 35 and Ipswich at home in 37. So although Leicester have been relegated and aren't great themselves, they've got the best 2 fixtures they're going to have all season in the next 3 game weeks. Now, we need to be careful at this stage of the season, and I'm guilty of it as well, is creating these narratives around nostalgia and stuff like that. So I spoke about on Free Hit 34, potentially getting Trent Alexander-Arnold, because it might be the last time we can own him. Now, in Trent's case, he's still in his prime, right? There's a reason that he's leaving Liverpool to potentially go to Real Madrid. Kevin De Bruyne, another one that people brought in recently. And there was loads of chat last week about getting Jamie Vardy. One last party before he leaves Leicester. He's going to want to score, and all these kind of things come out. But of course he's going to want to score. He's wanted to score all season, and yet he's only got 7 goals. Now, if he's going to add to that tally, it's going to be against Southampton and Ipswich at home. But there's a reason that he's leaving. There's a reason that Leicester have been relegated. They don't score many goals. And Jamie Vardy's got 7 all season. Now, I'm not saying anything bad about him. I think he's a Premier League legend. He'll leave as a great. He's got 3 seasons of 20-plus goals in the Premier League. He helped Leicester win a FA Cup, Premier League. Great player. He's not that same player now. So by all means, go for him as a punt for one last time against Southampton and Ipswich. But don't try and talk yourself into it because all of a sudden he's going to score loads of goals because he's leaving. That's probably not the case. Again, there's a reason that Leicester have been relegated. If you do want some confirmation bias, though, I think he's on 198 goals for Leicester. I believe I heard that correct on a podcast this week. So he only needs 2 more to hit 200. I think he'll hit it before the end of the season. So good price at 5.3. But honestly, if you're looking for a pick for now to the end of the season, I prefer Visser, I prefer Chris Wood, I prefer Cunha. And they're not that much more expensive. So if you've got the money, go for them. But the game's supposed to be fun. And if you want to take one last punt on Vardy, why not do it when he's got Southampton and Ipswich coming up? So speaking of nostalgia, Kevin De Bruyne being brought in by a few people again this week. The remaining fixtures for Man City are pretty good. So Wolves at home 35, Southampton away 36, Bournemouth at home 37, then Fulham away 38. We now know that Man City are in the FA Cup final. That will be played in game week 37. So either that Bournemouth game will become part of a double in 36, or it will be in the midweek of 37. And if it stays in 37, it'll be FA Cup final at the weekend, midweek game against Bournemouth, and then a game against Fulham at the weekend. I said this when people were buying De Bruyne in game week 33. They had 6 fixtures remaining. I thought if you get 4 starts, that's pretty good. If you get 5, that's great. And if you get all 6, I mean, that's probably dreamland, which I don't think will happen. So far, he started 2 out of 2. The problem is he then wasn't selected for the FA Cup semi-final. And that was probably tactical. Pep Guardiola wanted to set up in a different way. But you just never know when he's going to change things. Like Savinho has found it very difficult to get a start recently. Then FA Cup semi-final he starts and Kevin De Bruyne is on the bench. And Pep goes for a slightly different setup. And you're just not sure when he's going to do that along the way. Now, because, Palmer's not firing at the moment, we think there might be some rotation for Saka in 35. Is Liverpool away in 36. Everyone's got Salah, but there's no need to go and buy Haaland right now. There is money to be spared. And if you've got it for De Bruyne, I really do not mind the punt because the fixtures over the next 2 are so good in particular. But just don't be surprised if he's benched. I feel like I've got to say this every time because people forget about it with Man City players. We think about the upside and we forget the downside. So, as I've said before, De Bruyne, I really don't mind the punt if you've got the money, if you want to go for him over in Burmo, Bowen, whoever it might be. But you are not allowed to be shocked if he's benched because it could happen in any fixture. How many of the remaining 4 games do I think he'll start? I think 2. I think if you get less than 2, you've been super unlucky. I'm not sure how much money I would put on 3 or 4. Like if I was putting my own money on it, I probably wouldn't put too much down because I wouldn't be that confident. You might get 3. I don't think you'll get all 4. I think that would be really surprising. Obviously, he is leaving. So if he can start in that Bournemouth game, the final home game of the season for City, I'm sure he will. But Man City do have Champions League places to secure as well as trying to get that FA Cup final. So obviously there's sentimental reasons around playing De Bruyne, but Pep's got things he has to do. He needs to get Champions League next year. And if he thinks he does that without De Bruyne in one of these matches or 2 of these matches, then he'll do that. So Newcastle players are continuing to get a few transfers in this week. The most transferred in are Trippier, Murphy and Isak. Obviously Trippier did really well in game week 34, getting that 15-pointer against Ipswich. There is no way I would bring him in this week. I think the chances of clean sheets for Newcastle over the next 3 in particular are quite difficult. It's not that they can't do it, but Brighton away, Chelsea at home, Arsenal away doesn't scream clean sheets to me. And also, as much as I enjoyed Trippier's points on my free hit in 34, he's not been that attacking this season. You look at those underlying numbers, 0.1 expected assists per 90, 0.01 expected goals. Yes, he takes a lot of set pieces. You've got players like Davern up for corners. But he's not had the same, or at least he's not at the same level of attacking potential as he was a few seasons ago. So I really wouldn't go out of your way to get him. I think you've probably missed the boat on that. On Murphy, still excellent value at 5.3. He continues to be the winger that's subbed early. So him and Barnes are starting. Gordon's coming on, but he's coming on for Murphy most of the time. So you're not likely to get 90 minutes out of him anytime soon. But he's great value at 5.3. And he continues to start. But again, the fixtures are not amazing. Brighton away, Chelsea at home, Arsenal away. I think general advice for me would be keep the Newcastle players you've got if that fits into your plans. But I don't think I'd be buying any new. Like if I'm going for Murphy, I know when I talked about Rashford replacements earlier, there's not a huge amount of standout options, but there's many more options I'd want to punt in that slot than Jacob Murphy. So, and it's not that I hate him. I think he played better than Barnes against Ipswich, right? When I was watching that game, I was quite jealous that I didn't have Murphy and I had Barnes instead. But I just don't think it's the right time to buy him. And it's pretty much the same with Isak. Now, I don't mind buying Isak so much because he's probably the best forward in the league, great underlying numbers, he's on penalties, absolutely nailed. He's still a good option, but you can go and get players with better fixtures. Like, I've got Isak in my team. If Villa end up doubling in 36, which looks unlikely, but if they did, I'd probably sell him to Watkins. I might sell him to Chris Wood in game week 36, and I'm definitely tempted to get rid of him before they play Arsenal away in 37 for like a Vissa or a Chris Wood, like I mentioned. Like, Everton at home in 38 is okay, but I think if you're going to take a punt on not having Newcastle players, this is the time. So keep whoever you've got by all means. I know a lot of people love Jacob Murphy right now, rightly so, but I don't think I would pick any of them up. Isak maybe, but even then I'd probably go elsewhere. So speaking of Ollie Watkins, with Marcus Rashford out for the rest of the season, Watkins should be pretty much nailed to start every single one of the remaining games for Aston Villa in that number 9 role. I just don't see anyone else in the Villa squad that Unai Emery would use. Maybe if they're playing a game and it's comfortable and he wants to rest Watkins, then he might do that and just play someone else in a false 9. But even then, there's like a week between games in the current schedule. So I don't really see any issue with Watkins' minutes going forward. Should start every single game. And he's a big differential. His overall ownership is 18.1%. But if you look at teams in like the top 10k, top 100k, it's going to be much lower than that. Because Rashford has been around and Watkins hasn't been starting, not as many people would have picked him up, even for the double in 33. So I like him as quite a big differential. He's not cheap at 8.9 million, but I think he is comparable to Isak for the rest of the season. Watkins doesn't have penalties, but he has got a slightly better fixture run. So if you're someone out there, again, looking for a little bit of a differential and you want to take Isak on, someone like Watkins is definitely to be looked at, basically. And if Aston Villa get that double in 36, which again does look pretty unlikely, but if they do, it'd then be Fulham at home in 35 and Bournemouth away and Spurs at home in 36. I think it would be worth picking up, even if you're then selling him again in 37, because he should start both of those games, and you just don't know what kind of side you're going to get from Spurs. It's just a pretty good double game week overall. So I really like him. I don't think I'll be rushing to sell Isak for Watkins unless that double comes. But if the rest of the squad starts looking okay and there's no other transfers to be made, I'll definitely consider it. And if you're in the market for a new forward and you want to go a bit more expensive than Vissa, Cunha, Wood, etc., then definitely look at Watkins. And then we've got the defender with the most amount of transfers in so far this week, nearly 50,000, Josko Gvardiol, currently priced at 6.3 million. There's not too much to say here. He is just a really good pick. You're certainly not buying a differential. I think he's in a lot of teams right now, but he is just a good, solid choice that's probably going to get a few points before the end of the season. Man City's fixtures are quite good. Wolves at home, Southampton away, Bournemouth at home, Fulham away. I know people will tell me that Wolves are in great form right now. I'm sure they'll put up a pretty good fight against City and could score. But a home fixture against Wolves, you're not worried about playing a defender in that. Southampton at home is good. We know his goal threat is decent. Even if he continues playing in this centre-back role, he's still a threat from set pieces. He scored in the FA Cup semi-final against Forest. And he's basically nailed. Now, I'm always wary about saying that for a Man City player, but he's only been benched in 2 games all season, and one of those he came on at half-time for 45 minutes. Only the Liverpool game earlier on in the season was he on the bench for the whole game. He started every other one apart from Brentford. So if we can't say that he's nailed, we'll never be able to say that about any Man City player. Would I be completely shocked if he misses one game out of the blue? No, not completely shocked, but I'd be surprised with Gvardiol. So goal threat good, pretty much nailed on. Decent-ish price. There's probably money to go around at this point because not many people have got, Salah and Haaland and Saka or something like that. I mean, no one's got Haaland, obviously. Yeah, I like him. You're not buying a differential, but you've got a solid pick that you can just put in your team for every single game for the rest of the season and just leave him at that. So if you want to buy him, you absolutely should. If you enjoyed that video, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below who you are transferring in or out this week, and I'll catch you tomorrow for the game week preview.